Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinaire. Before we get started, let me say Ramadan Mubarak. In advance, I'm hoping that everybody has a successful fast. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm here today to talk about the Islamic City 30-day challenge to love Allah more. What does that mean, Preacher? It means that we're all going to talk about the different ways that we can love Allah more, that we can dedicate ourselves and devote ourselves to the Most High, and in this special time of the year, Ramadan, get closer to our Lord. Now, the way I'm going to love a lot more, brothers and sisters, is I'm going to focus on correctness. Self-correctness, emotional correctness, spiritual correctness. Because I believe in this way I get closer to my Lord because I'm a lot more humble and a lot more open to His mercy and His wisdom. This was a big thing for me when I became Muslim, about self-correction, especially growing up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, hearing all the noise about what I was supposed to be as a young black man, as a young black boy. And I found this calm, if you will. This calm that was passed down for me, from my relatives, my mom, my dad, all my relatives. It was that whole idea that we could self-correct ourselves. And I found this peace in the religion of Al-Islam. Now, you can't do what I'm going to do. I mean, don't copycat. Make your own video. I already said I'm going to love a lot more because I'm going to focus on self-correction. You have an opportunity to make your own video and talk about how you are going to love a lot more. That's right. So what are you standing there for? You got a limited amount of time. Ramadan is starting in like 15 minutes. I believe that you should get out and try to figure out how you're going to love a lot more. Make a video, 2 to 3 minutes. Join the challenge for Islamic City to love a lot more. I'm Preacher Moss. In advance, Ramadan Mubarak, and I'll be seeing you throughout this 30 days. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the S.O.S, a shout-out show. Hope that you are having an amazing Wednesday. Let me tell you right up front, a little bit under the weather, but I'm feeling really good. All praise due to Allah. Something's going around, and I'm trying to I'm trying to be smart this year. This day I didn't fast today, and I was like, okay, you don't fast one day, you can get back on it, and alhamdulillah, and all praise due to Allah for giving us mercy during this blessed month. That's number one. Number two, and continue to send out du'as and blessings to our dear sister Eleanor Davis, part of our Shout Out Show family, that she feels better. Continue health to my mother, Mary B. Moss, and sister Maxine B.K. I call them the Danville Golden Girls. Thank you for holding in steady. Today's topic, actually, it is selected from Jews 14. I actually had done a recording for, I think it was Sapelo Square, in regards to Jews. Every year they ask us to, give us our own personal take on the Jews. And they asked me to break down Jews 14. And what I decided to do is actually make it applicable to what we're dealing with today. First and foremost, in this lifetime that we have and in this whole scope of understanding and logic, one of the things that has become apparent to me is that we live in two different worlds. There's the world of the believer and there's the world of the disbeliever. Now, before we get into a space where we start running rampant about, you're not this, you're not that, there is layers to this thing. And going through Jews 14, I began to understand that there are definitely layers to disbelief, because disbelief is tied to a different type of logic, the same way belief is. If you look at some of the idea of hadith, if you will, it's not absolute hadith. There are levels to hadith. There is strong hadith, there's weak hadith, middle hadith, there's makruh. We have all these aspects of hadith, but they tie into the relevancy of what's being said and how it's applicable to the realities around us. I thought this would be a great topic today because there's just so many things going around. And I sometimes I'm amiss by just calling them distractions. They're not distractions. They're a very higher aspect of education and intellect, because people are making decisions about what we call distractions, pardon the air quotes. But first and foremost, the idea of Jews 14, it comes from Sir Nafal and Sir Hitch. And in accordance to so many things that we read about, I think it's extremely important for us to actually get into this, because it really opened up my eyes about how we live here in the United States, per se. It really lent a whole different aspect of reasoning to what happens to us in terms of race, sex, poverty, oppression, all those type of things. And I don't want to even say just the bad things. There's also the good things too, because we are, in some regards, we're shown a list or category of what the blessings are in front of us. We know that our behavior corresponds to a certain type of action from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the same time, if it's a good action, you get this. If it's a bad action, you get that. And it definitely builds on this whole idea of what is belief in terms of contemporary times. So for today, I'm going to get into that. So without further ado, we're going to start the show and I'll be right back. Don't you move with a shout out show. Hit it, Satana. All right. Thank you for coming back. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I give some love and appreciation for everybody, the Shout Out Show family that always meets us in the comment section. Without further ado, let's start bringing them through. Sister Satana, who we got today? All right, we got Mama San. What's going on, Mary Moss? Good to see you. I haven't called you today. I was a little under the weather. I'm going to call you as soon as I get off the air or a little bit afterwards. I have to talk to Brother Kendrick. But I'm feeling better. Thank goodness for tea and honey and soup and Ritz crackers. Those are the things. Only thing I don't have is Vicks Vapor Rub. And I might get some of that too. So, peace and blessings to you. And nice to see you back on the set. And nice to see. And let me know if you're using your iPad or your computer. That'd be interesting to know. I had to buy my mom an iPad, everybody. I'll tell you that comedy when she's not on air. Okay. Next up, we got Sister Ree. What's going on, Sister Ree? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings to you, Derek Juwan. I hope everything's going well. Sister Ree and I have been going through this whole thing of allergies, and the allergies are so bad you can't tell it was an allergy or it's a cold. So it's hard to treat one or the other. But I'm gonna get through it. I got good energy, good bounce, and I'm gonna make sure that inshallah I get my rest and we'll be on tomorrow. Looking forward to feeling better tomorrow. Good to see you. Next up, Brother Roberto Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And Ramadan Kareem to you, good sir. Thank you for joining us. This is second. I think I've seen you a couple times, so let me just throw this out here, Brother Roberto. You are now welcome, and you're a part of the official Shadow Show family, man. So when you pop through, give us these slams. I hope you're doing well. Peace and blessings to you and your family. I don't know if you've been on, but Brother Roberto, I've seen you a couple times. We do a virtual iftar. So what you can do is go to permissiblelaughter@gmail.com. Again, that's permissiblelaughter@gmail.com. And I will send you a stipend so you can go ahead and have your iftar. All right. So whether it's Zelle, Venmo, or Cash App, let me know, and we will send that out to you. Just a little stipend. Because we are on different time zones, I give everybody a virtual stipend, and you eat what you want to eat. Just tell them what you eat. We do a little virtual potluck. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, we got my main man, Bilal Salahuddin. What's going on, beloved? Peace and blessings to your queen, Sister Sonia Salahuddin. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sir. Peace and blessings to you. I'm going to get that picture up. I haven't forgotten. I was a little I needed some rest today. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm feeling a lot better. Peace and blessings to you, man. Big brother, thank you so much for tuning in and keeping up with us. I might have a little work with you, too. So let me talk to you a little bit later. Next up, we got my little brother, Johnny L. Thomas. That's that government name, but he's always going to be JT to me. What's going on, beloved? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to see you, sir. And I know I'm not going to wait till our Sunday call. JT and I have a Sunday call like 6 in the morning. I'm going to call and find out how you doing, man. I'm interested to find out how the job is going as your big brother. Very proud of you. And I hope that everything's going well, man. I'm rooting for you. All right, next up, what's the show without Brother Altaf Rashid? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Kareem, my dear brother. He is the Canadian envoy for the show, better known as Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, always in the space. A longtime supporter, a day one supporter of the Shout Out Show, just like many other folks here. And we appreciate you coming across the border without having to use your passport, my dear brother. I hope everything is well. Don't forget the virtual iftar, because I want to make sure that you get it on time. All right. But good to see you in the house. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, Mother Herb, all the way from South Carolina, my beloved brother. What's going on? I said, Herb, I'm calling you the Big E, all the way from South Carolina. What's going on, beloved? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So good to see you, my dear brother. Thank you so much for joining us. And next up, and you know who it is, our executive producer. Wa alaikum assalam. I had some peanuts, sorry. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I keep it real on the show. My dear sister, Satana Whitfield, the EP of the show. Hope you're doing well. And let's send out some well wishes and shafas for Sister Satana. She's been, she's been championing this thing, but she hadn't been 100% well either. We hope that you're feeling well, good, feel better, good, dear sister. Okay? All right. That's right. Contact us at permissibleLaughter.com at Gmail. Again, that's permissibleLaughter. I said .com. Boy, I'm messing up today. PermissibleLaughter at gmail.com. I got 2 .coms in there. I mean, never going to get that. I'm never going to get the stuff for the virtual iftar. Okay. So let's start this thing out. Juz 14 is interesting because Juz 14 really talks about the scope and almost the demographic makeup of almost like an avatar of the disbeliever. The disbeliever has several characteristics. Number one, a disbeliever does not have value of several things. Number one, their time and your time. If you read Surah Asr, this is by the token of time truly, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, by the token of time truly man is in loss. The idea of loss is measured in the context of time throughout the ages, meaning that there have been examples of loss throughout the ages. If we go back and dial back to the idea of the prophets, the whole idea of prophetic tradition is built upon the fact that every prophet has had to deal with what? Disbelievers. High, low, in the family, had to deal with disbelievers at different levels. Now, the thing that's really interesting about the whole idea of the disbeliever is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays it out in a very, very, I want to say very, very not casual, but a very, very pragmatic understanding of how things go. See, to disbelieve in something, you have to believe in something first. That's the logic. To disbelieve in something, you have to believe in something first. That there has to be something that gives you a variation of how you see it or how you feel. You know, my grandmother used to say, there's just two things in life. There's the truth and whatever else you want to believe. There's the truth and whatever else you want to believe. This is part of this whole idea of innovation. So when we talk about belief and disbelief, it is the fact that belief has to fight through this whole, this complexity of innovation. In Islam, they say innovation is bid'ah, fine. But I'm talking about the everyday situations, scenarios where you're forced to make a decision. Hear what I'm saying? You're forced to make a decision about what you believe. Now, you can talk about human law and you can talk about natural law. You can talk about God's law. You can talk about religious law. Even in aspects of religious law, it still leaves a space whereby you have to confirm whether you believe something or you don't believe something. Whether you believe something or you don't believe something. Now, throughout the scope of ages, what has happened with the human being, and the human being is the only one that will be defined by their belief or the unbelief in this life and the afterlife. We're the only ones that will be defined by belief or disbelief. That it becomes more and more a character statement about what kind of information that you're taking and what kind of communities that you're building. The interstitial with the believer has always been interesting because when it comes to the human being, let's say in contemporary times, you have to believe that something is awry because even the nature of Shaitan is he does not make it compulsory on you to disbelieve. Listen to what I'm saying. Disbelief with Shaitan is not compulsory. He leads you to a space, and you have to determine the merits of your belief and disbelief. And sure enough, when you read that, this is almost like going into a Walmart store of blessings. Maybe I don't say that right. But maybe you go into a Walmart store of blessings or a store and it has all the blessings on the wall. Right? Good family, good health, wealth, knowledge, compassion, has all these things on the wall. But on the other wall, it just has one thing: disbelief. And if you go for that, it basically disregards all these other things. Like, you can't have a part of that, because if you disbelieve, it removes, if you will, the pathway to get to these things. I look at it in contemporary times, look at it in social times. People always look at the civil rights movement as Black people fighting for their rights. Listen to what I'm saying. They regard it as Black people fighting for their rights, fighting for equality. If you read Jude 14, it's much deeper than that. It's that there are Black people who are fighting for what they believe. And the violence that's accrued to them, that's accorded to them, is fighting against people who don't believe. You see, in America, just like any other country, anybody that practices oppression, the scope becomes, it's not that I need you to believe what I believe, but I have to compel you to believe what I can believe. I have to make it incumbent upon you that even if you believe something, in this environment, it doesn't have traction. It's like being in a room full of smokers and you don't smoke. Somebody could give you a cigarette and you'll say no. But if you're in a room full of smokers, you're going to take on smoke anyway. You may not have smoked, but you're going to take on the residue of everybody else who did smoke. Case in point, throughout history, and this is something I talked about with my mentor, Harry Weber. May Allah be pleased with him. Harry explained to me that the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s for African Americans begins a troublesome period because there is an alignment in terms of what we believe. There's certain things they didn't believe. They didn't believe in the American justice system. They didn't believe in the idea that white America had their best interests at heart. And they also didn't believe that white America could correct itself. Listen to what I said. They didn't believe in justice. They didn't believe that the white America could correct itself. These are things that form a different type of belief. Ironically, it's also in line in terms of religious tradition. That it lines up with Christian aspects, but it doesn't line up with Christian aspects because it looks at the scope of how Christianity is affecting them as a whole. Islam comes in the 20s and creates something different. That Islam says that despite what it is, your relationship is not to the American government. You're not to be obedient to the American government. You're not to believe in the American government. You see, the problem with politics, and this is real talk, the problem with politics in America is for America to work, you have to believe me. You have to believe in me, not God. We don't want that alignment. You have to believe in me. And it's a very simple type of thing. And I used to drag folks a little bit about the naivete about how people go believe and don't believe. But in that naivete, it's a very, very complex process. Now, we're going to be right back after this message talking about belief versus unbelief, belief versus disbelief in Jude 14. Don't you move. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear? I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
just gotta hear, don't get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
Shout out to Convenient Urgent Care. If I don't get any better, I'm going to be coming up through there. So, me and Satana, we're going to show up virtually. Getting back to this whole point of belief versus disbelief. I always felt this, and it's interesting, that the tool of the disbeliever is one to, Roberto said, little Curtis Mayfield. Well, you can't go wrong with Curtis Mayfield. And shout out for Mom, you found your computer, alhamdulillah. Actually, she might be watching on TV. No, nobody knows. So the whole scope of belief versus disbelief in the United States really boils down to this, that to enforce disbelief is to mandate law. Now, if you heard me talk about the basis of critical race theory, you understand that critical race theory boils down to not making little white kids feel bad about slavery and things. It has nothing to do with that. It is a very, very specific critique of law, the application of law. And ironically, the application of law has been demonstrably put on those who believe differently. So anybody who believed differently, if you were freed, a free man coming out of slavery, if you believe that you shouldn't be a slave, then you were subject to laws. The old vagrancy laws, which were basically, if the police came down the street and they saw you and you weren't working for somebody, then they were going to assign you to somebody, some work camp, because in their mind, they still owned your rights. And when they put you in prison, they owned your body. Even now, the fight is ridiculous, but it's also to a point where the ridiculousness it has taken on a certain type of normalcy. That we now fight for people to believe what we believe. There's no balance. There are, there's some people, I believe I'm this, you need to believe I'm this too. Listen, there's no examples of a gazelle going around and then a lion's going, I believe I'm a lion. Because the lion's going to go, I don't know what he believes, but I'm hungry. Think about this. You now have a whole argument about people who say, I'm a man, but I need you to believe I'm a woman. And this is really interesting because years ago they had this conversation, but they didn't have the balance and they didn't have the backing of law to change things. Or even more so, they didn't have the backing of social commentary, the social capital to change things. I don't want to go down that road. It's a rocky road, but it has to be discovered. It has to be discussed because these things come to the forefront because what? Because the laws. Even in the aspects of Muslims in terms of homophobia, not homophobia, but Islamophobia and homophobia, let's throw all the phobias in there. The way that you move from disbelief to belief, oppression to acceptance, is that somebody has to come up with a law. To quote my good brother, my big brother Reginald Kitchen, may Allah be pleased with him, he used to paraphrase from the Quran. He said, Shaitan Listen to me. Shaitan promises you everything and gives you nothing. He promises you everything and gives you nothing. Why is that important? Because it also brings into the fact that disbelief, regardless of what you feel, it requires time. That a disbeliever has no value unless they are occupying the time of the believer. As my brother said, Shaitan guarantees you, he promises you everything and gives you nothing. Think of the whole aspect of credit. There was a time when you would walk down the street, you would see something you want, and you go, I can't have it because I don't have the money to get it. I don't have it. I can't afford it. Maybe I'll put it on credit, but I can't get it. And I remember getting a credit card when I was in college. And I had no money, but I had a credit card. I had an American Express credit card. Now, all of a sudden, I believed I had money. Hey, get yourself something to drink. Hey, I got you. Go ahead and something to eat. And I put down the credit card. And the credit card made me believe that I had power to purchase. I didn't have power to purchase. Because credit, just like disbelief, it allows you to suspend the reality and the logic that you don't have money. Now you have money that's owed, that's in a vacuum. You had no money. Now you're on the negative side of it. And the thing that always reminds me about credit is when you don't have it to pay right away, you're paying over time. I'm not saying that credit cards are from Shaitan, but doggone it, it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint. But let me get to the wrap here. The thing that's really, really important, and I think I don't want to overlook it, is the fact that there is a logic to the disbeliever. The same way as there's a logic to the believer. Oftentimes, we are judgmental about what we frame as disbelief. And I'm saying being judgmental, we may rush to judgment in some regards. Because the idea is, in this space, we have to guard ourselves. We have to, I want to say, put parameters around our logic. And sometimes it's best not to go into those situations. Sometimes it's best to frame it as it is. That disbelief has to operate in a space that you don't necessarily need to be over there trying to turn people around. I always talk about interfaith and things like that. You know, interfaith is really a practice in some regard for how strongly you believe. We look for disbelief in interfaith. We want somebody to be less Muslim, to be less Christian, to be less Jewish, so we can say, see, look at that. But think about what I said about Surah Nafal, and I talked about all those blessings that are promised to us. And it says there in the Quran, the only thing that's going to keep you from the blessings are you. That you're going to lend yourself to disbelief, that you're going to lend yourself to waste of time, that you're going to lend yourself to these different levels of disbelief, and all of them require and occupy your time. There's a purity in devotion, there's a purity in service, there's a purity in prayer. That our prayer counteracts the fact that we waste time. That for the Muslim, you pray 5 times a day. For the Christian, you go to church, but you pray throughout the week. But there's an advocacy about how you spend your time. And in that space, if you're spending time trying to get closer to a better you, closer to your Lord, if you're just trying to get closer to being a better father, a better mother, a better brother, sister, husband, wife, think of how we spend our time. And if we can get into that space, it all does 2 things. Number one, it shores us up about the idea of belief, but it also sharpens our idea about what disbelief is on a personal level. That's it for me today. Inshallah, you guys have a blessed rest of your fast. Inshallah, I'll be fasting tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time. Remember, think about belief versus disbelief. I'm Preacher Moss. This is a shout out show for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.